Good evening to those bored enough to watch. Games can be of varying lengths in terms of completion, whether it be through that of the main story or in terms of the side content and whatnot. Different games take different amounts of time to finish. In this video, I want to talk about an undoubtedly short game, one that is very well made and tells a short but engaging story. Developed by Chronerion Entertainment, A Fragment of Her was released in 2014 as a part of a game jam that was taking place during that year, in which, according to its Game Jolt page, it ranked 4th place out of 23 when it came to the community voting. And when playing this game, it's easy to see why. The game has a very short story, but alongside its visuals and charm that the game has, I really do think that it is worth your time. So, seeing as how my next video might be a while, I figured this would be an interesting game to talk about in the meantime. There is a video detailing the making of this game by Chronerion Entertainment, though it is in a different language that I don't speak, so if anyone is interested and can speak or understand German, I will leave that video linked in the description. So, with that said, let's discuss A Fragment of Her. One of the many things I want to appreciate about this game is that it is very detailed, even right from the beginning. The title screen sees students awaiting something and the receptionist busy at work. There's mostly no audio except for the sounds of clicking of the receptionist's keyboard. It really is an interesting way to begin the game, immediately intriguing the player by showing them the setting that they will be spending a lot of their time in. We play as Selina, an aspiring art student attending a university after moving to the big city. She's here to study under the famous Albert S. Seligmann. Other students are here, one is nervous and the other is lost in thought. After sitting in a chair, we eventually wait for him to emerge from his office. He's a cynical man, self-centered at that and highly critical of the work of others. Reviewing the other students' work, he eventually gets to Selina, whose painting isn't as bad as the others but could use a lot of improvement. To Seligmann, it isn't good enough. She argues with him and eventually he tells her that the class starts tomorrow in the university's library. The next day, we arrive, and Seligmann lays down the law of his classroom. When painting, his students will grow to learn to consider the people viewing their work. Each week, they will be presenting their work with the expectation that the quality of his students' work will improve with each week. That's his only rule, and if they fail to comply then they will be kicked out. I really like the irony in this part of the game. Seligmann says that when doing their work they must consider the viewer, though when looking at his works you can clearly see that he only considers one person when he paints, and that's himself. I really appreciate that this irony is hidden through sudden detail, and isn't outright pointed towards the player. It takes them a few playthroughs, knowledge of what goes on later in the story, as well as some thinking to understand and pick up on it. Though with that, we decide to see if we can pick up some books to help us with improving. Trying to speak with the other students, we get the impression that perhaps we're not exactly liked by them. This individual here just won't speak to us for some reason, so we turn our attention to this individual here sitting on the windowsill reading a book. Her name is Tomoko, a student in literature who's currently studying for her final exams. When speaking with her, she tells us that people say that we need to be careful around Seligmann, and that is something that Selina should put into practice. Though when asked further questions, she seems to shut down any further discussion of the topic. When asked about potential books that could prove useful, she mentions that there are 2 that proved useful to our roommate who was previously in one of Seligmann's classes, and we should be able to find some of them here. So we begin looking. After searching through all of the shelves, we return to Tomoko to see if she can jog her memory on them, though she only remembers one. We find that we can't seem to find the other, and decide that we will need to make do with the one that we currently have. At Selina's apartment, you find that it is a very messy place, with clothes littered on the floor, unpacked boxes and piles of books on the floor. Never mind that though, for she goes straight to the canvas and begins painting. In doing so, she reflects upon her nightmares that she commonly has and how painting generally is a helpful activity to do when trying to cope with it. She describes it as allowing for her to feel like she's controlling them as opposed to vice versa. She soon finishes her painting and with full confidence awaits judgment on it the next day. Come the preceding day, and her painting is met with a scathing review from Seligmann. It makes him uncomfortable to look at as Selina lost track of what exactly it was that she was painting. He told her, consider the viewer, and thus expects better from her next week. Accompanied by her, Tomoko tries to calm Selina down, disagreeing with Seligmann's ideals when it comes to art. Tomoko suggests that Selina should photograph Seligmann's work to study them and apply them to her own work. We need to get a camera, but in order to do so we need to go to the apartment and recover the passcode for the bank account. So when we get there we search around, find it and then return to the library with the camera. After photographing all of Seligmann's work, we return and begin trying to mimic his style in hopes that it will please him. Though when the next day comes, Seligmann isn't pleased. He sees this as a shameless mockery of his excellent different style and gives it yet another scathing review. With Tomoko, she suggests that Selina tries to find the second book in hopes that it will perhaps help her in the same way that the previous one did. So, after being able to talk with Peter here, he gives us the book in exchange for our camera. As we begin to return, Seligmann finds us and tries to kick us out, but with enough convincing, he allows us one more opportunity to impress him. We'll have one day, in which when we're done, we are to meet him after hours in his office. Without suspicion, Selina accepts, desperate and determined to prove her worth to Seligmann. At her apartment, a frantic Selina immediately begins work on her next painting. In doing so, she reflects upon her adoptive parents and their doubts with her endeavours into art as a career, and questions whether they believed her when she mentioned her nightmares to them, explaining that she eventually got tired of the many visits to doctors and psychologists and eventually lied about her own betterment, for, in her eyes, the sake of her own betterment. She'd have blackouts during the day whenever visions and nightmares would enter her mind, but before she can reflect upon it anymore, she finishes her work and sets off for Seligmann's office. When we get there, Seligmann emerges from his office and tries to convince Selina to enter his office, in which she appears reluctant to do so. When trying to verbally convince her fails, he begins trying to forcefully drag her there, leading to a struggle. This sees Selina trying to talk Seligmann out of this, before ultimately she sees no point in trying any further and bashes her painting over his head. In a panic, she leaves the office, thus ending the game. Throughout the game, we've been seeing hints that Seligmann hides his true colours with a facade, a cynical and egotistical professor by day and a manipulative man by night, abusive of his authority to get what he wants. A look at his paintings and what's depicted in them, it is a very big hint at the kind of man that he is, which I think is this game's way of showing that art can be expressive of one's conscience, how they truly feel inside. For the average person, that's their feelings, whether it be happiness, sadness, or their nightmares and what haunts them. It can be expressive of their troubles like it is for Selina. Artistic works can be unique for that reason. They serve many purposes, either as a doorway leading into fiction or as an expression into one's feelings, in which, if you think about it, it is that for both of these characters. Selina uses art as a way to cope and express how she feels about her nightmares, and for Seligmann, it's women that he won't get. I really like that this game has many hints towards this ending and the kind of man that Seligmann is ultimately way before the player finds that out for themselves. Though, looking at his paintings in the library and through conversations with characters like Tomoko and Peter, with that, I want to talk about some of the extras. After beating the game, there really isn't a lot that you can do, understandably so. The game was made as an entry into a game jam, in which the heavy time crunches that come with such occasions, I doubt that the developers had enough time to even think about replayability. Though if you find yourself doing so, there are a lot of details you can find within that I really appreciate. Whether it be serving as dramatic irony during points of the story or messing around with the camera, in which at points the game will reward you for doing so. For example, if you decide to try and take a photo of Tomoko, you'll find a nice interaction between them as the two briefly bond for a moment. I really want to take this time to appreciate the work that went into this game, whether it be visual artwork that went into the game and the detailed sprites within, or the game having brief moments and interactions that it didn't need to include but does so regardless. I really think that this game is great and has a fair amount of attention to detail that shows care from the developers, though with that, I want to conclude things. Overall, I would really recommend this game. It's short, but it deserves the little time it demands to reach the end. I really like the story and its mature depictions of themes such as abuse of power. I really like the artwork that went into the game and the amount of detail in the sprites. The game has had sequels since its release, forming the ceasing to be her demise trilogy of games by Chronerion Entertainment. My time with this game was short, but it was time that I really enjoyed and it had my attention from start to finish. So, if you're interested, I would really recommend playing A Fragment of Her. It requires a fragment of your time, and provides an enjoyable and fairly memorable experience. So, there's the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. I apologize for the much shorter video. I have been working on another, but it will take a bit longer to complete, so I wanted to quickly make this video to close any potential gaps in uploads. I am working my hardest to bring it to you, and I hope you'll enjoy it when it releases. For now, I hope you all enjoyed this video about this short but great game. I'd really recommend it. If you want to see the list of games I want to make videos about in the future, you can always do so with the link in the description. Additionally, if you want to follow me, then my socials will be linked in the description, as well as any afterthoughts or messages I may want to add. With that, I haven't really got much else I want to say, so I'll see you all in my next video. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I wish you all a very pleasant evening.